Hi, welcome to Quilting with Lori. My name is Lori Dickman, and today I'm going to be sharing with you week number 19 of my 52-week series of Scrappy blocks. And if you haven't had a chance yet to watch my video, Speedy Solutions to Cut, Sort, and Organize Your Scrap Stash, make sure you do that. The link is below. It will really help you to get your entire scrap stash cut, sorted, organized, and ready to use in beautiful quilts. We all need help with our scrap stash, and that's what that video is all about. Plus, these weekly tutorial videos are to help you use up your scrap stash and make beautiful quilts. If you look at the quilt behind me, this is a scrappy quilt that I've done. It's called Marching Monkeys. You'll find that pattern out in my website. You'll also find it in my Speedy Solutions patterns book. But what I've done here is I've used two different blocks and created a beautiful design with my scrappy fabrics, but I'm using two different blocks in there. It's a wonderful way to use up your scrap stash, find two different block patterns that you just love, and have fun creating unusual designs. So I encourage you, with the 52-week series that I'm giving to you, take a couple of those blocks and do something like this Marching Monkeys, where you're actually putting two blocks together and you're creating a wonderful design. So now let's take a look at week 19 block, and it is called Old Maid's Puzzle. And this is a very old block. In fact, back in the 19th century, it was always featured, or very often featured, in Amish quilts. So it's a wonderful pattern to use. There are some 3.5-inch squares, and in the center it's just a 4-patch. And then there are a total of 10 half square triangle units. And I love to use my Speedy Solutions technique to make half square triangles. You might have a different method that you like to use, but use whatever technique works best for you to create half square triangles. Sorry about the barking upstairs. Bailey must have seen a squirrel out the window. But back to this block. All of the blocks that I'm presenting in the 52-week series are 12.5 inches, so that they'll finish 12 inches in a quilt. And so with this particular one, it's a 4x4, 4 rows, 4 columns. Each of these units is 3.5 inches that I'm pulling from my stash, and then of course it finishes at 3 inches inside the block itself here. And what I've done, I've gone to my scrap stash and I've pulled some 3.5-inch squares as well as some 4-inch squares. Let me show you what I've pulled and why. For this Old Maid's Puzzle block, you'll first of all want to download the PDF. I do have a PDF attached. It is in the description box below. Make sure that you download it and either save it to your computer or print it, or even just create a playlist of all of these 52-week series of Scrappy blocks so that you can access it when you're able to get to it. And this just gives the simple instructions for the block, and I often like to put in a sample of an idea for a quilt for you using the block. So this Old Maid's Puzzle block was set on point, and depending on the fabrics that you're using, if you use more modern fabrics, this could be a beautiful, fresh, modern quilt that you're creating, although it's a very old block. So let's take a look now at what I pulled to create this. So for this block, I have gone to my bins. This is where I store all of my scrap squares that I cut up. And the PDF will tell you what you need. I am needing 2 either medium or dark 3.5-inch squares and 4 3.5-inch lights. And I'm needing a total of 5 medium or dark 4-inch squares for the half square triangle units, and 5 of the 4-inch light squares for the half square triangles. So this particular version with this crisp white light fabric will make a much more modern look to the Scrappy block. This one that I've already created has more of a traditional look because I'm using some of those warm tones in here. Another thing that I was able to do with this block when I created it, I actually had leftover 3.5-inch half square triangles in my stash, in my container here. So I simply pulled 10 of those. They were already there. So I encourage you, make sure if you have leftover half square triangle units that are from previous projects, make sure you put them in the appropriate container. In my case, these were 3.5, so I put them in the 3.5-inch container. So I was able to really put this block together quickly because it simply is a 4-patch in the center. There are a total of 10 half square triangle units and then 2 lights for the corner and it's simply 4 rows. You just need to be sure, and that pattern tells you row by row that it's important to orient these half square triangles in the correct position so that the block turns out looking the way that it should. So now what I'm going to do is take these crisp, clear whites and these other colors here, the mediums and darks, take them to my sewing machine, and I will put this block together for you step by step. The first thing that I'm going to do to put this block together is simply create the 4 patch using the mediums, darks, and the lights. So I'm going to create this 4 patch, and then we'll get on to the half square triangles. So here's the 4 patch unit. I am going to go ahead and get it pressed and squared up to 6.5 inches. To create my half square triangles, I have laid out the 5 4-inch medium dark squares. They're in front of me here, face up on the table. And now I'm going to take the 5 4-inch light squares and place them on top, right sides together. And I'm simply going to draw a 1 diagonal line from corner to corner on each of these squares. And then I'm going to sew a scant 1/4 inch down one side and back up the other side on each and every one of these. I'm going to do it in assembly line fashion. You've seen me do this many, many times on all of my scrappy blocks that I have created for you that require half square triangles. It's a real fast method of creating half square triangles. I do everything in assembly line fashion. I lay them all out. I use my ruler and my pencil and draw my line, and then I get them up and sew them. Then I cut them on the diagonal line, press them open, and get them squared up. And in this case, we're going to be squaring up each one of these to 3.5 inches when I'm done. So I have just finished in assembly line fashion all of my half square triangles. I did the sewing where I sewed a scant 1/4 inch down both sides of the drawn line. You can see it better over here. And then I separated them by cutting from stitching line to stitching line, and that just removed some of that excess fabric. I like to do that. Now I'm going to cut them apart. You can either cut them apart on that drawn line using a scissors like I'm doing here, or you can use your rotary cutter and mat, whatever works best. And then when you open them up, for each unit, you're getting 2 half square triangle units that you've sewn. So this is great. And you'll end up with these 5 units. You're going to have 10 half square triangles. So I am using the clearly slotted perfect trimmer. It's trimmer A, which you use for half square triangles that are 1.5 inches to 6.5 inches. You use trimmer B if you're trying to square up half square triangle units that are 1 inches to 6 inches. And so I'm with the trimmer A here. I am going to square up this half square triangle unit to 3.5 inches. So I'm going to find that 3.5 inch line on my ruler, and you'll see there that there's a dotted line there. That's the stitching line. I think you can see it better with my hand back here. I'm going to line that stitching line up with the stitching line on my triangle, and then I'm going to center it on that triangle. Let's push this down a little bit so you can see what I'm doing better. And then I am going to just trim up the excess on each side. And there isn't really a whole lot that has to get trimmed away, but it's important that that does get trimmed away. The neat thing about the clearly slotted trimmers is they also have this neat little area here where you can trim away the excess fabric from the corners. There's a little slot there. I can't seem to get my unit in there, and it just trims it away. See how it squared it up and got rid of that excess fabric there, so when you open up the half square triangle, it's not visible. So that's it's a great trimmer. You don't have to use it. You can simply use a square up ruler if you want and trim everything up to 3.5 inches square. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of that done. Then I'm going to press mine open to the dark and make sure that all of that is pressed to the dark. You may prefer to open your seam allowances. That works fine too. If you do choose to do that, make sure that you make your stitch length a 2. You want to lessen your stitch length so that it's a tighter stitch length so things don't come apart. But either option is just fine. I wanted to show you here too, I'm pressing open my half square triangles, and I am pressing them to the dark here. But what I do when I'm pressing my half square triangle units, first of all, I set the stitching or set the seam there. That just helps to set everything, and then I pull it back and press it. And make sure when you're pressing them open that you're not pressing a fold into that area. You want to make sure that that half square triangle unit is pressed open flat. So just simply go ahead and press them like that. You can use steam, you can use Mary Ellen's Best Press, Precision Product. There's so many different things that you can use to make sure that your units are all pressed open nicely. And now I'm going to go ahead and lay out the block so you can see how to put it together. So I've laid out the block here on the tabletop next to my sewing machine so that I can web the block together in 4 rows of 4 columns. And what you see here is the top row is a white 3.5 inch square. Then I have 3 half square triangle units next to that. And make sure as you put this together that you're orienting each half square triangle unit correctly. I had this one incorrect here a moment ago, so it looked odd, and fortunately I saw that before I started sewing it together. The second row is of course part of this 4 patch that I put together, and there are half square triangle units on both ends of this, and these are facing upwards and these are facing down. So make sure that you orient them properly. I will sew these units together, and I'll sew these units together, and then I'll sew them to the 4 patch, and then I'll sew the rows together. Down here again we have 3 half square triangle units. They're on this side with the light square here, so the light squares are forming a diagonal right here. Very simple, simple to put together, goes together quickly, great stash buster for you, and it would be a beautiful quilt if you wanted to do a red and white or a blue and white or something where it's just a 2-color quilt. How beautiful that would be. So I have just finished the block, and I've trimmed it up. I've scored it up to 12.5 inches. And as you saw, I sewed each row together. I sewed, first of all, the 4 patch. I sewed these 2 units together and sewed them to the 4 patch. And then I had this row finished. And I sewed this row and attached it to the top and bottom. Very simple, very fast unit. Be sure that these things are oriented. Those half square triangles are kissing basically right here on each side. And these kind of look like fish, if you will. So that's how they are to look. So as you create your block, make sure that you're orienting the half square triangle units as they should be within each block to ensure that you get the old Maid puzzle block. It's a very fun block, a fast one to put together, and I hope that you'll try it. What I love about using your scraps is the variation that you can get in your blocks. This one has more of the warmer undertones because most of the lights have that warm undertone. And this block has more of a bright, crisp look because of the white squares and the light white background that I'm using. So it's really fun to see what you're going to come up with. I love to use all of my scraps, and I often will use lights and brights, or warms and cools, I should say, within the same block. My goal is to use up my scraps, and I love the scrappier the better is my thing. So hopefully you've enjoyed it, that you'll try your hand at that. Don't forget to try the quilt that I've also put together on this PDF. Here it is. Couldn't get my fingers on it real quick, but this one would be a real fun one. You could make this very modern or very traditional. Just have fun with it. This is all on point. And I wanted to point out, I'm thinking of this weekend having a Zoom class where any of you who are interested to join, I will put this PDF. This is my log cabin on point. It's using 2.5 inch strips. So I wanted to let you know about it early in the week so that you could cut up strip stash, so you have plenty of 2.5-inch strips and then a couple of 2.5-inch squares for each block. But I thought it would be fun to work together on this via a Zoom. I do love to use Zoom. I do a lot of workshops and lectures via Zoom. What I love about Zoom is that you're able to communicate back and forth. I can see you and talk with you and chat with you, and that way if you have questions, I'm able to help you right away. So if you're interested in that, I'm going to put this out in my website where you can click on this PDF and download it. It'll be a free PDF, but once you do order that as a free PDF, then you'll also get a Zoom link if you would like to participate in my Saturday class. I'll probably start it around 11-ish. That way, for people on the East Coast, it'll be 9 in the morning. It's 11 here at Central, and it'll be noon for Eastern time. So if you're interested in that, definitely grab this PDF out in my website. I'll have a link in the description box. With that PDF, then once you place the order for the free PDF, you'll get the Zoom link where you can jump on that call on Saturday. That would be, I believe it's January 20th, whatever the Saturday's date is. So I just double checked the calendar and found that Saturday is January 21st. So at 11 Central Standard Time via Zoom, I will go ahead and start working on this sew-along class. We'll probably sew for a couple of hours. So if you can jump on, that would be great. I just wanted to give you a heads up so that you'll have enough time to get your 2.5-inch strips ready to go for Saturday's sew-along. And we're going to need 2 squares, 2.5-inch squares, and the rest of it is strips. And the PDF will give you all the details. There's a link in the description box. So grab that link. It will take you out to my website where you can actually order this free PDF. And once you get that email with your confirmed order, that's where you'll have the Zoom link. So make sure you check that out. And I have 98 Zoom seats available. So it's for the first 98 people that are able to jump on and get this ordered and so forth. And then I'll also try and get it live on my YouTube as well so that you can see it here in case you can't get on via Zoom. But thank you so much for stopping by today. I'm so glad you were around to check out this block, the Old Maids puzzle. Love the block, absolutely love it. It's so much fun, as I said, to grab a couple of different blocks like I've done with Marching Monkeys and put them together to create a beautiful quilt design. So have fun with that. I hope you're enjoying the Scrappy blocks that I present to you each week. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and please share these videos. Share them with your program's chairperson, with your guild, so that they can share them with everyone in the guild and they are able to take advantage of using up their scrap stash. So make sure you do that. Make a playlist. I will have a playlist below that you can just save if you like, or if you want to create your own. That's wonderful. But I really appreciate all of you, and thank you so much for liking and subscribing. That really does help my channel, not only to grow it, but to get to other quilters just like you who want to be able to use up their scrap stash. So thank you so much for participating. It's great to have you back each and every week, and I will see you in a few days with another tutorial. This one's going to be on the New Year 9 patch. I have put together a quilt center using some applique techniques, and I wanted to share that with you. I think you might enjoy that. So we'll see you in a couple of days.